I spent the past 3 days trying to figure out how I wanted to start this video. I could talk about my history with South Park, how for the longest time my only exposure to them was the Bigger, Longer, and Uncut movie, which I found hilarious my first 10 or so watches, but quickly got old. How I like South Park well enough, but far too much of the brilliant social commentary is hidden under a pile of rancid shock humor that doesn't make me laugh so much as it makes me wonder what I'm doing here. When South Park's social commentary does hit, it's some of the best you'll ever find, like the goth kids fighting against conformism by making you conform to them, or the mayor saying South Park needs to seem more compassionate, but the homeless make it seem like it isn't, so you are sent out to beat the shit out of the homeless and drive them out of South Park. Both the show and the game have various amounts of this kind of shit, which is genuinely hilarious. But then it also has things like a dude fucking a horse, a gay man shoving enemies up his ass, a Nazi zombie fetus that's triple the size of a human and was pushed out by a Kardashian, and it's this kind of shock humor for the sake of shock humor that makes me kind of question how funny South Park actually is, and how much of it is made for us to react to. On the other hand, I could start this video out by talking about the brief history of South Park games. Every South Park game up until Stick of Truth has been considered absolute shit, and it wasn't until the Stick of Truth that companies fully figured out how to turn the concept of South Park into a game, by doing what they do best and parroting other games, specifically Skyrim in its storyline and Paper Mario in its gameplay. I'll get more into both of those later. But no, what I actually want to start this video with is letting you know the purpose of this review. You see, I played this game already. In fact, I platinumed it 3 years ago, way before I ever started streaming or doing gaming as content creation. And as I was searching my game library trying to figure out what game I wanted to do next, I came across the Stick of Truth and thought to myself, I completed this game, but I don't remember much about it. And it was only 3 years prior I completed it, so I should have a pretty good memory of it. So the question in my mind, why is the Stick of Truth so forgettable? Hi, my name is Kaiser, and on this channel we do video game reviews, rants, and opinions. And if that's something that interests you, then please click that subscribe button down below, as I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the Stick of Truth. Our game starts with a narration from Cartman over a really well-animated, almost Ralph Bakshi style animation. Stories of the land of Zaron and a never-ending war between humans and elves for the ever-coveted Stick of Truth. Stories of a new kid, that's us, by the way, are spread throughout the land, and it's a race for the humans to recruit the new kid before the elves can. Afterwards, we are thrown into a pretty basic character creator. You can choose your skin tone, hairstyle, basic clothes, these will never come into play again for the rest of the game, makeup, which is like freckles, mud, blush, etc., and glasses if you want them. I make a character as close to me as I possibly can, and we hop in. We cut to the house just being moved into by us and our parents. Our parents start talking about how they moved out here to get away from some event that plagued us in our past life, and they go upstairs to greet us. And here we get the first of many running gags throughout the game. You are a silent protagonist, and the game heavily overplays this joke. People are constantly annoyed at you not speaking, often taking offense to the fact you never say anything, and in some instances taking your silence for compliance. This would be all original and hilarious if, 1, they didn't refer to it in practically every cutscene, and 2, if Saints Row hadn't done the same thing but better 8 years prior. But I digress. We bum around the house for a bit, discover we can poop in toilets and leave the shower on, so I make it my goal to do that in every house we come across, collect some shit to sell, and then our dad says get the fuck out and go make some friends. So we start our walk and quickly come across Butters fighting a kid with elf ears. We walk over and punch the kid. Butters thanks us for our help, says he is a paladin and he's our next door neighbor, so we should be friends, and this introduces us to the friend mechanic. So Stick of Truth has a slew of collectibles and shit to do, more than you would honestly expect. But the main collectible is friends. Every side quest results in you making more friends. Now, a normal game might spread the benefits of making friends out as stuff like recruiting them to your party, them giving you gifts, etc. In South Park, the only real benefit to getting friends is perks. There are 20 perks in total, and most of them are either useless or won't come into play that often. I'll talk more on combat in a bit, but just know I played this game on medium difficulty, and it's piss easy. The other benefit is 4 characters in the game will give you a once-a-day item that allows you to summon them and skip a combat encounter completely. Mr. Miyagi does some dance and cuts a bitch, Mr. Hanky summons a storm and tidal wave of poo, Jesus pulls out a fucking machine gun, and Mr. Slade shoves enemies up his ass. Summons cannot be done to bosses, but there isn't that many in the game anyway, so you'll be fine. The main issue with summons is that they can only be used once in in-game day, and an in-game day doesn't pass like it does in, say, Skyrim. Time only progresses during the story, so the most you will ever be able to use Slade, Miyagi, and Jesus summons is 3, and the most you'll ever be able to use Mr. Hanky is twice, as you don't get access to his area until after the first night. The problem is, you have to go back to the characters to get their summons from them, and while the map isn't big, it is a pain in the ass to trudge to each area to get those summons. There's fast travel flags next to each one except for Mr. Hanky, but it's still just the act of going get those summons means you will only get them if you happen to be in the area. Summons, while powerful, aren't all that needed for many reasons I'll cover later, so when you do get them in game, I recommend using them once for the novelty and then never again. In any case, Butters leads us to Cartman's house, and let's just get this over with now. Cartman calls himself the Grand Wizard, his side's base is called the Koopa Keep Kingdom, and all equipment from them is shortened to KKK. Haha, racism funny, let's move on. Kenny is playing a princess, nobody asks why, and everyone respects Kenny's pronouns, which is based as fuck. The game tells you to put in a name, and then it has Cartman call you douchebag anyway, and I am once again reminded this game isn't as funny as I remember. Actually, let's talk about the comedy a bit. Stick of Truth definitely has its moments where it can make me laugh. There's never a moment when I'm in one of those rib-splitting, doubled-over laughter states, but it does make me chuckle, and a few times it does get a genuine laugh out of me. But there's so many jokes that just fall flat, and I don't know if it's because I'm old or because South Park just isn't actually that funny. Things like this "your name is douchebag" or the scenes where it has you waiting for Jimmy to finish a fucking sentence. Jokes in this game most of the time either fall flat or are just disturbing. A great example of this is on the second night you wake up to underpants gnomes stealing your underpants, so you fight them. They make you small and take off. You chase them, and then there are not one but 2 different fights with your parents fucking in the background. Awkward for stream for sure, but also it's supposed to be funny, and it just isn't. The final battle takes place with a naked old man dick and balls all out and just sitting there. He does nothing, you're just supposed to find it funny a naked old man is back there. And the magic in this game is fart-based. It's all so juvenile, and I'm not saying juvenile humor can't be funny. I still laughed at a few of the jokes in this game, but most of them just weren't funny. And it's weird because I remember quite enjoying the humor a few years ago when I played it. Hell, I even make dick and horny jokes from time to time myself. So why doesn't this hit me like it should? I think because it feels almost unplanned. What I mean is, in most shows similar to South Park, and even South Park itself, jokes have a purpose. They exist to explain someone's personality, drive a story forward, things like that. But in the Stick of Truth, they just seem to be making jokes for the sake of making jokes. Everything feels like they just want to shock you and make old women clutch their pearls. They want the game to be a subject of discussion for old politicians to fake outrage about and attempt to get it banned, very similar to the original show, and you can tell that's the purpose of all of this. In any case, after Cartman forces our name into douchebag, we have to choose our class: fighter, mage, thief, or Jew. The thief was the class I chose on my first playthrough, and for the purposes of engaging with one of the only unique aspects of this game, for this playthrough, I picked a Jew. Cartman says we can never be friends because of that, and I am starkly reminded of the KKK joke again. We go get a weapon from the weapon shop, the elves attacks, and we are thrust into a combat tutorial. Combat is deep and complex. Except it isn't. The game wants you to think combat is deep and complex. You have your melee attack, your ranged attack, your class abilities, your magic spells, your potions, and your summons. Your teammate has potions, a special action, their abilities, their normal attack, and an option to swap other party members. This is the first of many Paper Mario comparisons. Fights are turn-based, and generally speaking, you and your party member will go first, one after the other, and then each enemy will have a turn. And then you will go again, etc., etc., until one side is completely dead. Both you and your teammate have your own health bars, and even if you die, as long as your teammate is there with a revive potion, you don't actually lose the game. I saw the game over screen only twice in the whole game, and it is when I fucked up in a cutscene. In any case, on each turn, you can use a potion and an action. Actions can be a ranged or melee attack or an ability. Ranged and melee attacks can be enhanced with button presses as a little gleam happens. This again is like Paper Mario. Abilities cost thing called power points, or PP for short. Abilities cannot be countered. They are extremely powerful and often in the game in 1 to 2 turns. Once you've found your favorite ability, you will use that and nothing else, every time without fail. Because the game throws loads of potions at you, and because the potions are so cheap, you will always have more than you will ever need. And since you can use one potion a turn on top of your actions, you will always be using abilities. For my class, I unlocked this ability called Circumcise. You cut off the opponent's balls, cause bleeding, lower their defense, and cut their armor in half, and even shields, if they have them. I guess this is a good time to explain status effects. There are several status effects in the game. Bleeding, burning, and gross out are the most common. Burning and bleeding both do damage over time, although bleeding is far stronger because it stacks, and once you have an opponent to at least 3 bleeding, you've pretty much won because it cuts off such a massive chunk of their health that you can often kill people by applying the bleeding and then doing nothing else. Gross out stops them from being healed and stops you from consuming potions. Pissed off will make your opponent unable to use abilities while only attacking you. Ability, attack, and defense up and down are exactly as they sound. Shields prevent all damage per hit, so you have to hit the shields with multi-hit attacks, and armor reduces damage by a flat rate by deducing the armor count from the incoming damage. There is reposting and reflecting. Reposting enemies will ignore melee attacks, and reflecting enemies will throw ranged attacks back at you. Enemies can also charge a super special attack that you need to fart on them to interrupt and stun them. All of this sounds like there is a deep and strategic system, but again, all you're ever going to do is use abilities to bypass all the bullshit. Inflict as much bleeding as you can and win the game for free. Even the in-game boss is completely stomped by all the powerful spam abilities and bleeding. You might use melee and ranged attacks a bit, a lot more in the beginning, but overall these will eventually fall to the wayside as you will realize how utterly broken everything else is. Overall, combat feels dull and unsatisfying. It's more of an annoyance than a general enjoyable part of the game. And if you're sitting there going, well, Kaiser, just don't use abilities. Play the game as the devs intended and sprinkle in other stuff to keep it fresh. The problem with that is if it is up to me, the player, to handicap myself in order to spice up the combat, then the developers didn't do a good job designing combat. When making a combat system in a video game, it is up to you as the developer to make sure the player cannot find the most broken combo imaginable and make combat a breeze. Imagine if there were more enemies immune to bleeding or immune to having their armor knocked off. You'd have to find some creative ways to get around your limitations. If some enemies could be hit with abilities at all and instead had to only be hit with melee attacks or ranged attacks, this would be just a great variation on the combat. In Paper Mario, there are several enemies that have to be approached in different ways in order to deal damage to them. It makes you actually have to think about your actions and you feel satisfied when you get around them. There is no challenge or strategy in this combat system because the devs were more concerned with seeing how often they could make you go and grasp your heart in shock at their audacity than they were at building a compelling system. Anyway, after the ambush, we learned that the Stick of Truth has been stolen. Clyde was supposed to be guarding the stick and failed and is banished to space and time, or time and space, whatever. And we are sent out to recruit 3 warriors to help us get the stick back. Craig is in detention for flipping off his teacher, so we'll come back to him later. To go get Token, we need to buy a gas mask from Jimbo and then beat the shit out of the security guard. To get Tweak, we need to go to a crack den, beat up some crack heads, and return the crack to Tweak so he can give it to his dad to put in the coffee. After that is said and done, it's time to bust Craig out of detention. All of the hall monitors are ginger, and if you get bit by one, you become a ginger too. Ha ha, please laugh. And now I want to talk about something I don't hate. This game's presentation is so fucking good. In fact, I would even go out on a limb to say it's some of the best presentation in video game history. The art style isn't just a copy and paste of the show. It's made in such a way that it looks like it belongs in a video game. And I know that sounds weird, but let me try to put it this way. It would have been so easy to just port the art style of the show onto the game. I mean, honestly, it would have been really easy. This was made for Gen 8 consoles. The PS4, Xbox One, and of course PC can so easily grab the choppy paper art style of the show and run it at a smooth, uninterrupted frame rate. but the art department of the team went out of their way to create a similar but unique art style for the game that really shines. Every subtle color and shading makes this really strong 3D environment that is so immersive, and the best thing the game has going for it is you really feel like you're playing in South Park. Everything pops out, and even with all the fucking snow on the ground creating a big white areas, the game still manages to not flashbang you every time you enter these areas. The character animations are reminiscent of the show and makes it seem like you got plopped right into the cast of the show. Normally in something like this, you'd expect to create a character to pop out among the rest as the game throws memorable characters at you and goes, look, see, you know this guy, he was from that one episode, look! And the game does have references, but they aren't in your face, annoying like you expect. Instead, you blend in. You are the member of South Park, and the game makes you feel like that. I also talked a lot of shit on the combat, but it too shares this beautiful presentation, a great art style and dynamic backdrops with beautiful animations. Combine this with the fantastic sound design, and the whole game feels alive. And this is something longtime viewers of the channel will know about me. I need games to make me feel like I live in them. Like when I'm playing, I am the character existing in a world that is alive and moving even without me around. And South Park does that great. Even the NPCs regularly move through the town, talking on phones or saying random things to you. Almost every person can be interacted with, and sometimes you find people in weird spots that make you feel like they actually went through the motions to get there instead of being placed there as another set piece. A special part of the presentation I want to mention is the environmental interactions. Throughout the game, on multiple occasions, you are invited to use the environment to take different paths, find secrets, kill enemies, and to avoid combat, and more. This is important for two reasons. Number one, the indication of how to interact with an object is both subtle and noticeable, so it isn't jarring, but you won't easily miss it. And number two, it really brings life to the fantasy that you are a kid playing pretend with his friends and the world is your playground. Everything about South Park: The Stick of Truth feels alive. And for anything I may criticize about this game, please remember that it is, at the end of the day, gorgeous. So we break out Craig, and now it's off to fight the Bard. Find him in a tavern called the Giggling Donkey. And you know how I just got done talking about the amazing presentation? I like how everything involved with the fantasy world of the kids is made using real world objects. It really helps invoke the feeling of the kids playing pretend. Things like Cartman using a lighter and hairspray for a fireball, or your circumscythe ability just being a small blade. The pool of unison is a kiddie pool. Small things like this really help build on the effect. We go down to fight the Bard, who is Jimmy from the show. The game does another really unfunny sequence of Jimmy not being able to talk, and then after we beat up his friends, he runs away, kidnapping Kenny to leave us locked in the basement. Craig falls and hurts himself, and we are introduced to buddy actions. You remember how I said the combat was the first of the Paper Mario inspirations? Well, this is the second. You can use your party members to interact with the world. However, unlike in Paper Mario, where you could do it any time and find secrets using those abilities or affect enemies outside of combat, here it only happens in story quests. There's no strategy to it, or skill, or freedom. It's just a continue the game button, and is bad design, which I don't fully understand. They did such a fantastic job with an interactable environment. Why would you not have more stuff to do with the buddy actions? You know what occurs to me as I write this script? The complete disconnect between the combat and buddy system and the interactable environments. I sometimes feel like the combat became turn-based because the developers wanted it to be Paper Mario so bad. At first, I thought this was there because maybe the small D&D connection, but there's no real references to D&D outside of the I'm a level blank class in dialogue that constantly happens, and occasionally the loading screens have a full dice set in the corner. The game parodies Skyrim in its storyline and Paper Mario in its game design. Did the developers feel like they had to include turn-based combat? Would it not be better if the combat was more action-based with a quick wheel for abilities and such? Imagine if instead of killing enemies outright, the environmental damage could add status effects based on what you did, and buddy actions actually had effects on the fights. Butters could heal NPCs to assist you in nearby combat. Kenny could distract enemies so you could sneak past. Stan's dog peeing on them would cause gross out, and so much more. I feel like the combat would have been far more involved and even more balanced had these things been the case. The buddy action system should have opened up a door for a thriving party with the hottest people you know and your favorite foods laid out for you to consume. But as it stands, it's a door that opens to an empty beige room containing another door. Anyway, we go upstairs to say something about how Princess Kenny is about to be raped. You're supposed to find that funny. You go upstairs, rescue Kenny, and then you beat the Bard and take the stick back. After some more fucking around, we eventually have to go home to go sleep, and the first of the night events happens. There are two night events in the game which give us new abilities to transit the world. For this one, we are abducted by aliens. The alien ship is entirely uninteresting. We basically get a satellite shoved up our ass we can use to interact with these teleport points to help us teleport from different locations on the same screen, and we beat up some aliens. We find a homeless man in the basement who has turned into a Nazi zombie that will become apparent later. We help free Stan's dad, Randy, from getting his asshole probed, and then we beat the shit out of the alien pilots and the UFO crashes into the old South Park Mall. Wake up the next morning and the crash is all over the news. Some government assholes cover it up as a Super Taco Bell opening it up. Ha 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 ha, please laugh. Cartman rolls his bitch ass over to our house to tell us that the elves have come at night and stole the stick of truth. In order to fight the elves, we must recruit the goth kids. Before we do that, let me touch on something that may have been bothering some people up to this point. I don't not find this game funny. It has some genuine funny moments. Hell, it's got a lot of them. If you watch my playthrough of my second channel, cough cough, shameless plug, I do laugh a lot. This game isn't completely devoid of humor, but what I find funny and what I find annoying or uninteresting at best are constantly at war with each other. The goth kids are a genuine laugh. Finding Jesus means literally figuring out what he's hiding. Oh, hello, Mongolians! Got me a bit, and the physical comedy of your character staring at the ever more ridiculous shit happening to him can sometimes near have me rolling. There's this part when you're clearing out the Mongolian tower and you get to the top and your character just stares at this fully grown adult man on a big ass horse, and the combination of the emotionless stare and the dead silence in that moment was some of the funniest shit I've ever seen. The game genuinely is funny, but unfortunately, much like the show, it's too busy trying to make you laugh at every moment it can, instead of crafting a compelling story and environment and letting the humor evolve from that. I think that's why I never held the show in that high of a regard. While I like the show, just like I like this game, I feel like too much is lost in the pursuit of comedy instead of letting the comedy just happen, and it gets really distracting sometimes. Anyway, off to recruit the goth kids. They won't talk to us until we get some cigarettes, coffee, and dress like them. We go buy some clothes and makeup from the homeless guy by the U-Haul place, get the cigarettes from some teenagers by a dumpster, and buy a dark roast coffee from Tweek's coffee shop. After we buy the coffee, the elves show up to take us to Kyle, leader of the elves. Kyle tells us Cartman is a bastard who probably stole the stick himself, and that we should instead recruit the goth kids to Kyle's side. I choose to side with the elves this playthrough because kicking the shit out of Cartman is cathartic. Afterwards, the goth kids won't talk to us until we go hang a sign that says fuck the conformists at the PTA meeting. We go up there and we're stopped by Randy. Randy takes us to the bathroom to teach us a new fart spell. Oh, right. The fart spells. Okay. I guess it's about time to talk more about other aspects of the game. Mainly the magic and equipment. So starting back right before we went to fight the Bard, we are introduced to a spell called Dragon Shout, just in case the Skyrim parody of having a war between humans and elves where you have to pick a side, and one side is very obviously racist and the other side is tried to kill you, wasn't on the nose enough. There are 4 spells in this game. Dragon Shout, a close range fart that stuns in combat. Cuppa Spell, a ranged fart that I don't know in combat. I never used it. Sneaky Squeaker to distract enemies and move them out of position. I also never used this one in combat. And Nagasaki, used to break objects with a green aura. I also never used this one in combat. The 4 farts are similar to buddy actions in that they are basically a move that plot forward button, but they pull double duty in allowing you to interact with the world to find secrets, kill enemies, and more. Something I had wished the buddy actions also did. There isn't that much to talk about with them really. Some characters compliment your amazing control over your asshole to do these farts, and that's weird, but other than that, they aren't that interesting. A far more interesting subject is actually the equipment. Throughout your journey, you will find equipment everywhere. Each weapon not only has damage numbers, but will regularly have a bonus effect. The same thing with armor and health bonuses. You can add further bonus effects to your equipment with weapon strap-ons and armor patches, adding things like elemental attacks and resistances, healing when you attack, additional armor stats, gaining PP when certain things happen. Much like the combat, weapons and armor along with their patches and strap-ons lead to a very diverse and interesting array of effects. Unfortunately, it's all overlooked by the fact that bleeding is the single best thing in the game, and some patches let you heal passively, which is all you really need. So once again, a system that seems deep and complex is boiled down to this one thing is broken, only use this one thing. Moving on, we use the new fart to sneak into the military base, learn that there's this green goo leaking from the spaceship that turns things into Nazi zombies. We return to the PTA, give the recording to Randy, take the picture, recruit the goth kids, and then we learn that a Cartman apparently hid the stick in his desk at school. Back to the school, we attack the humans this time around, fight our way through the school, we run into more Nazi zombies, beat them, and kick the shit out of Cartman. Then we learn that it was Clyde who took the stick as revenge for being banished from space and time, or time and space, whatever. We rush Clyde's base, and then it's bedtime, so we all get drug on home. This night, we get awoken by the Underpants Gnomes. We beat them up, gain the ability to grow small for some secrets to find, and head to Kyle's to see what we are going to do about Clyde. But before that, let's talk about side quest. I haven't really mentioned side quests in this video so far because, well, there's not too much to them. Most of them are some variations of go do thing 5 to 6 times and get new friends based on what you do. Clear out the homeless, collect underpants, get a package, find children, find more children, find Jesus, find an iPad. It's really and honestly just busy work, and doesn't do anything outside of get more friends to get more perks or more summons. Two things which, as I've already mentioned, you don't actually need. The side questing is fine and it gives you something to do, but honestly you aren't going to do much. The best side quest is Man Bear Pig, but only because it's slightly funny. Anyway, the solution to beating Clyde is for humans and elves to team up. It's up to us to recruit the girls to join our army, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of want to get to my conclusion, so I'm just going to rapid fire the last of the story. Ready? Let's go. To recruit the girls, we first go to them and they ask us to find out who's a two-faced bitch. We first act like one of their boyfriends to catch someone trying to hit on us. Then we dress as a girl and go to the abortion clinic to get some records about who went to the abortion clinic. Fight Nazi zombie Phoenix, please laugh. Go to the Canada to get some records translated, cut the balls off the bishop. Learn a final fart spell from Terrence and Phillip, get the records translated. Go to Clyde's castle, battle our way to the top, find a Nazi zombie chef. Clyde gets kicked off of a mountain and the government shows up, calls us Dovahkiin. Haha, we were parroting Skyrim, please laugh. We apparently have an unnatural ability to make Facebook friends. Oh my god, so good. The government dude thinks the stick of truth is really a powerful object, takes off all of his clothes, haha, please laugh. Kenny turns out to betray us. Morgan Freeman shows up to explain Kenny's betrayal. This is actually funny and I did laugh. Kenny becomes a Nazi zombie. We fight her multiple times and with a naked old man standing in the background, haha, please laugh. Then to beat her, we fart on her balls. All the Nazi zombies are cured for some reason, and to end the game, the boys toss the stick of truth in the lake and our character speaks for the first and only time.
Screw you guys, I'm going home. Wow, what a dick.
Alright. Sorry about that. So that's the stick of truth. And why did I forget a lot in this game? And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. I spent a good bit of time in this playthrough surprised at the random shit tossed at me. I couldn't remember more than 90% of what happens in this game despite platinuming it 3 years ago. So as I sat here writing this review, I started thinking. I went back and watched my playthroughs and I realized something. This is just an episode of South Park. I know that seems obvious, but let me explain. Shows like South Park, Family Guy, American Dad, and more are what I like to call potato chip shows. There's no through storyline or plot lines to keep track of. There is some continuity, but it isn't overall important. And while these shows do have episodes that are memorable for the most part, they are just part of mindless consumption. And that's not a bad thing. I love mindless consumption. My ADHD brain has me writing the script, listening to music, and watching Josh Strife Hayes videos at the same time. I need constant stimulation. But at the same time, because of the nature of these shows, I do not remember much from them. The most memorable South Park thing to me was the bigger, longer, and uncut movie. Everything else is just so much fluff, and it's designed that way. The Stick of Truth story, its characters, its quest, its mechanics, its world, is all just as if someone took South Park and made it a video game instead of a show. The game isn't meant to stick out in your mind, it's meant to be consumed and then forgotten about. My only major complaint regarding this, however, is the game isn't fun to replay. Once you platinum the game, there's nothing new to experience. I played this game twice, with separate classes, and nothing changed but the class abilities. My guess is siding with the humans invokes a different cutscene, but in the end, it all leads to the same outcome, with Clyde stealing the stick and us fighting Nazi zombie Princess Kenny as a final boss. Maybe on harder difficulties, the game might present different mechanics-wise and make you you have to use your brain a bit more, but there's nothing interesting enough about it to make me want to even consider playing it again. At the end of the day, the Stick of Truth is like a really basic but good bologna sandwich with some barbecue lays. It's a satisfying, if not mindless meal that will leave you just full enough to make it to something of substance. I do recommend the Stick of Truth, if only once for the experience, and then never again. And that concludes the last review of 2023. I hope you guys all have a fantastic Christmas and a fantastic New Year's. But before we get out of here, as always, I do want to give a special thank you to my channel members, The Gamer Geek, Peter RJ, The Cannibal Main, Spirit Upgrades, and Nuclear Bomb for their additional support. And if you want to get special thank yous at the end of videos, as well as perks like seeing videos early, then make sure you click that join button down below. But that's it for today. I love you all, and I'll see you in 2024.